nearly 100 meters long, 600 tons, 300 tires, and at one point, it has to fit through a road barely wider than a car. This is what it looks like when China moves a piece of equipment worth over $15 million through the countryside 1 centimeter at a time. It starts at a port. This 400-ton stator, the core component of a power generator, arrived by ship. But here's the problem. The port was too small to assemble the full transport rig, so workers loaded it onto a smaller flatbed vehicle and drove it to a nearby highway service area, where the real work began. Because before this thing could move an inch on the road, it had to be built. A bridge beam transport vehicle like this one doesn't arrive ready to go. It's assembled on site, piece by piece, specifically configured for the weight and dimensions of whatever it's carrying. The crew laid steel plates on the ground, positioned the stator, and started connecting the massive beam sections, each one lifted into place by a 130-ton crane. The connecting pins guided manually using a hand chain hoist. Old-school precision in a very modern operation, but the assembly was only half the battle. Before the stator could be loaded onto the bridge beam rig, it needed to come down by exactly 1 meter, so the beams could slide underneath it. That doesn't sound hard. It took an entire afternoon. Using electric hydraulic jacks, the team raised and lowered the stator in tiny increments, pulling out wooden support blocks, 1 layer at a time. Every measurement had to be accurate to the millimeter. One mistake with 400 tons is not a mistake you recover from. By the time the bottom beams were in place, the sun was already going down. Day 1, done. The rig wasn't even moving yet. Day 2, the crew was back at first light. The lifting attachment points on both sides of the stator were removed. They'd be needed again at the final destination for the full installation lift. 4 rigging hooks were placed onto the hydraulic flatbed for safekeeping. Then came the main event, connecting the stator to the bridge beam rig. The 130-ton crane lifted the center beam. The 17-axle hydraulic flatbed reversed underneath it. All 17 axles steerable by a single operator with a wireless remote. That's not a small thing. Without independent steering on every axle, a vehicle this long physically cannot make turns. It would just plow straight ahead. Beam by beam, the rig came together. Connection pins slid in, hydraulic lines snapped into place. Nearly 100 meters of steel. And it took a team working in complete sync to build it. Now, the transformer runs. And this one is bigger, 90 meters long, 600 tons total weight. 2 truck cabs, one at the front, one at the rear, each putting out 630 horsepower. Why 2 cabs? Because on a vehicle this size, one engine at the front can't do everything. When climbing, the front cab takes the load. When braking on a downhill, the rear cab provides resistance. And when you need to pivot, which we'll get to, both cabs work against each other to rotate the entire rig in place. Getting onto the main highway required a temporary road closure. Traffic officials sealed off intersections on both sides. The front cab crossed into the oncoming lane to create enough swing room. Then both operators, coordinating on the radio, walked the entire 90-meter body sideways into the left lane. It doesn't drive like a truck. It doesn't corner like a trailer. It moves more like a controlled avalanche. Slow, deliberate, and unstoppable. One bridge on the route had a problem. It wasn't strong enough. Not for 600 tons. So it was rebuilt and specifically reinforced for this convoy and for every heavy transport that will use this road for the next several decades. A single piece of equipment forcing a permanent upgrade to public infrastructure just by existing. That's how heavy this thing is. Then the convoy left the highway, And everything got harder. The final stretch runs through villages, narrow roads, low overhead lines, houses built right up to the edge of the pavement. The rig is almost exactly as wide as the road. Top speed, 5 kilometers per hour. A dedicated crew walked ahead, manually lifting power and telephone lines over the top of the rig as it passed underneath. Every meter required someone watching clearances on both sides, calling adjustments back to the operators. And at every turn, the convoy moved the way a centipede moves, one joint at a time, each section following the one ahead of it, each operator watching the section in front and reacting. 30+ people, one machine, completely in sync. At one point, a three-wheeler wandered into the path. The convoy stopped. Nobody panicked. Nobody honked. They waited, cleared the road, and started moving again, 5 kilometers per hour. The locals watched from their doorways. Some of them had probably never seen anything like it. Honestly, most people never will. Before the final turn, something happened that looked like a video glitch. The 100-meter convoy pivoted in place. Here's how. The front and rear cabs, having disconnected from their shared direction, drove against each other. One forward, one in reverse. The rig rotated around its own center, like a tank doing a pivot turn. No turning radius needed. It just rotated. Watch it again. It shouldn't be possible for something this size, but it is. After all of that, the highway runs, the bridge, the village roads, the tight turns. There was one more corner to clear. The crew knew it. Everyone on the ground knew it. The last turn is always the hardest. Slowly, the two cabs repositioned. The rig swung through its final arc, and the transformer arrived, intact, undamaged, exactly where it needed to be. Think about what just happened. Dozens of engineers, drivers, traffic officers, and local workers spent multiple days moving one object, so that it could become part of China's 800 kilovolt ultra-high voltage power grid. When that grid is complete, it will carry electricity across thousands of kilometers, enough to power millions of homes. And somewhere at the heart of that system will be this transformer, the one that came in by ship, the one that needed 2 days just to be loaded onto its vehicle, the one that turned a village road into a one-lane highway for an afternoon. Most people will never know this convoy existed. Now you do.